Hey, what's going on, folks? Another episode of Just My Opinion with yours truly, Just My Opinion with Ryan. So, if this is your first time here, please like and subscribe. I truly appreciate it. Thank everyone for if you gave me a view, a like, a comment, a subscription, or if you subscribe. I just appreciate it. I truly mean it. So let's just get right into it, man. Last night's episode of Atlanta, simply called the Big Payback. And boy, was it a big payback. This was just like the first episode. This was just a down, just like the first episode of Atlanta. This was just a straight up. This one was called the Big Payback, and it featured a guy by the name of Marshall. Very familiar face. I know he's been in a ton of stuff. His name escapes me at the moment, but you know how I do. I put it in the edits. But nevertheless, episode. First of all, I felt like this episode. I know the season is still young, still early. So far, out of the 4 episodes, I think this is the funniest one. Definitely has some dark humor to it, but by far the funniest one. It still have that type of dark, offbeat type of humor, but hands down funniest one out of the first 4 that dropped. What I liked about this episode, this literally felt like a stand-up comedy bit that was just, brought to life on our TV screens. It felt like a comedy bit that you could see a comedian saying on stage that was brought to our TV. Like, I could see this on the Chappelle Show if the Chappelle Show was back on the air, something like that. You know what? Like, for an example of like a comedy bit that went straight to TV or movies, was like the late great Robin Harris. Baby's Kids was a whole movie that was based off of his stand-up comedy bit about badass kids. So I felt like this had that same impact. This felt like a comedy bit brought to life, man. So it starts off just with, we follow a guy by the name of Marshall. He goes into the, I guess like a coffee shop or a barista of some sorts. And he's out there with his headphones on, listening to some podcasts. Long story short, he buys his coffee, and he didn't even realize that he pickpocketed. He just, which is an honest mistake, but nothing happens to him, things like that. No one checks him. I thought that was a nice, small, subtle sign of privilege in a sense. But anyway, it was, of course he could afford it. He literally just forgot. But as it goes on, he picks up his daughter, thinks that life is good. Although he's divorced, him and his wife seem to be getting along pretty great. The daughter is hinting to her father that, hey, I think mom still likes you. She put on that perfume before he came over. So things are good. He has a solid job, some 9-to-5 cubicle job. It was never really hinted at what type of job he has, but nevertheless, seems to have a solid, sturdy job. His apartment is nice. This and the third. And when he hears what's on the radio, he hears about a black man who won like a huge lawsuit settlement against the owner of Tesla, because the Tesla's owner's ancestors own that black man's ancestors, with slave owners. And so just from the history, he was able to win millions of dollars. And so this also reminded me of like when I don't want to use the C word, but when the pandemic first hit, I remember just listening to the news or reading, news articles about, hundreds of people getting sick in Texas, when the pandemic first started, or the panoramic, or whatever type of funny words people try to say. And I just remember thinking like, damn, I hope, prayers out to the people in Texas. I hope that gets under control. And then it didn't really, hit me until my job was like, yeah, we are going to work from home until things settle down. And 2 years later, I've still been working from home, but that's another story. So, I related to that part, because you listen to the news like, wow, good for him. And you don't really, and at least in his case, it's not like he really, I guess, did any type of homework to find out if his ancestors were slave owners or anything else like that. So he just listened to the radio like, damn, that's a wild story, but let me just go on about my day. And one of the reoccurring things that, if you saw it, and I know I forgot, but definitely spoiler alerts if you haven't seen this. So one of the reoccurring things that happen, he keeps getting a call from this unknown number. And so I do the same thing. If it's a number I don't know, or if it says potentially spam or maybe whoever, I'm ignoring it too. So he's doing that throughout the day. And then lo and behold, Shaniqua, surprise, just pops up at his door and was like, look, you owe me money because your ancestors were slave owners to my ancestors. So you owe me $3 million. And so that whole thing was funny. And I'm jumping all over the place. Even before that, there was even like this important meeting at work. His coworker is saying, did you hear about the news about the Tesla guy? This is ridiculous. And of course, at the meeting, you notice the majority, well, not even majority, I think it was all the white people who met. I think like any black person just maybe felt like they didn't need to go to the meeting apparently, for obvious reasons. And so, there's going to be some layoffs because of what's going on, things of that nature. You seeing white women who are co-workers of Marshall, they're crying hysterically all over the place. So this was definitely just something that seems like it's slowly affecting Marshall's, immediate area, and so it's starting to get closer and closer to home. And then that's of course when Shaniqua pops up about, hey, you owe me $3 million. And Shaniqua was just hilarious. I mean, she was determined to get that money. You pop up at Marshall's house or apartment. You pop up at his job with the bullhorn. And it's not like she even had other black people in there, protesting for the same thing. It's just her by her lonesome with the bullhorn, just airing Marshall out. Aaron's ancestor, owned by ancestors, whatever she was talking about. Just put them all out there on the spot. Marshall was trying to get advice from the only two black people left at work, because as you notice, all the other black people in the office apparently quit because it looks as if they were coming into some money. So, like I said, this whole episode just felt like a stand-up comedy bit from somebody. So that part was just funny. Who knows? Maybe this was one of the jokes that Childish Gambino never got to say on stage or something. I have seen some of Donald Glover's work as a comedian, and he's definitely funny. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Glover is one of my favorite, I guess, artists, all-around artists, because he's definitely mean as a rapper. Definitely did his thing on Community, and right after 30 Rock, he's just jack of all trades, if you will. So I always respected Donald Glover just for that alone. But nevertheless, this definitely felt like a comedy bit that maybe Donald Glover, would have said on stage or something. So as I mentioned, the very next day, all the black people just quit because they're coming into some money apparently. And you just start to see things slowly change in Marshall's life. He's driving by gas stations and he's seeing black people pulling up in the, like some exotic cars, filling their gas tank up. They got the Lambos out, whatever the flashy cars are, just chilling. So once again, things are just starting to, clearly are starting to affect his life. And I think one of the funniest parts in this episode was when the ex-wife of Marshall, she ends up picking up the daughter instead of Marshall. Marshall quickly goes to the ex-wife's house and is like, what gives? Why didn't you let me pick up my daughter? And she's putting him on blast like, yo, your ancestors owned slaves. We can't rock with you like that. Very disappointed. So all of a sudden, now things are falling apart in Marshall's life. Like just the other day, there was a ray of hope that he was going to get his marriage back in order. He still had a, healthy relationship with his daughter. Some type of a solid, stable job that he apparently liked. And then just at a snap of a finger, drop of a dime, whatever, what have you, things just got real, like on a different level for Marshall. And so I thought that part was funny because when the ex-wife was like, yeah, we don't associate with you, he got, was getting a little annoyed. He was like, well, what about you? I mean, what about your past? You ain't checking your past? I'm sure your family might have owned slaves yourself. And she's like, I am Peruvian. And Marshall goes, well, you was just white yesterday. That part had me dying. Like, yo, you was just white yesterday. Now you're Peruvian ever since this shit come up. So I thought that was hilarious how, and when, of course, with some jokes comes a bit of truth. I do feel like, if people can pass as white, they will. But if something like this happens, it's like, oh no, I ain't white. I'm Peruvian, or things of that nature. I think the same thing could be said for like people who are Spanish, but if you look at them, they pass for white. Like if shit hits the fan, it's like, oh no, I ain't white. I'm Spanish, and vice versa. Oh, I ain't Spanish, I'm white. So I thought that was funny, and I think most jokes have a bit of truth in it, so I found that funny. She switched to Peruvian real quick when all that happened. Shoot. Oh yeah, and then of course, another funny part, he pulls up at his apartment, already is having a stressful string of events going down. And who does he see? Shaniqua with her whole family just cooking out in front of his apartment. Like, she's living her best life, her family living their best life. He tries to turn around. Shaniqua's nephew tries to run down the car. Looks like a scene from Terminator. When the liquidator Terminator guy is chasing down the car. Just hilarious stuff, man. So, and here's where the dark part comes in. He checked himself into a hotel because things are just that bad. And I thought, he's sitting there turning the lights off and off. He's on and off, and he's crying. If this was a test or a quiz, I think I would be partial. I would get partial credit for this guess. But I thought Marshall was going to be the one to kill himself. He's already feeling sad. He's crying in his hotel room. And of course, we see who really kills himself. He talks to another guy who's in the same exact situation as him. But he's more like accepting the situation. He's more accepting of it. He seems like, hey, I understand where where the black people are coming from. We deserve this type of treatment. He's being a little too accepting of it, and the one part, once again, some jokes just have some truth in it. The one part I really thought was telling was even when he was talking to Marshall. I forget the other guy's name, but he was like, yeah, my father used to always teach me. I think he said father or grandfather, but he's like, yo, my father or grandfather, they used to teach me, hey, you just work hard, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, and you can get what you want to get in life. This and the third. And then he simply says, well, apparently my father had more help my grandfather had more help than what he let on because he owned slaves. So did he really pull himself up by the bootstraps, or did he have slaves do the work for him? So that was a real conversation as well. And once again, it took me to a real place. I think it's annoying when people, when Caucasians or white people try to hit that, pull yourself up to the bootstraps talk, especially to black people, because, we all know what happens when we pull ourselves up by the bootstraps is, we get torn down for some reason. Look at Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That whole place was burned down after we just tried to make our own community and do our own thing. It got taken from us. Look at what certain senators or people of office tried to do to Ketanji Jackson. So it's like when people of color do work hard and do the due diligence at this and the third, some people try to tear us down. So once again, that whole ancestors pull yourself up by the bootstraps thing, came from a real place. And then of course we see him moments later go outside by the pool, shoot himself in the head. So just all that type of stuff that's just like Atlanta, it's gonna bring some darkness to it. So I thought that was wild. And and of course after all that goes down, there seems to be some type of I guess you could say, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Compromise, I guess, or resolution. Marshall clearly owes this woman $3 million because of the actions of his ancestors being slave owners. And so, of course, unfortunately for him, he gets laid off at what I think it looks like he appears to be laid off at his, current job. And he ends up becoming like a waiter. And of course, he has to stay behind and, announce what type of percentage he's giving for his reparation taxes, So it's almost like we're just going to start taking out whatever you owe for however long it takes, out of your taxes. I mean, out of your paycheck to pay off Shaniqua in Marshall's case. So I thought that was just, once again, probably the funniest episode of the series, although it's still early. Oh, and another funny part, let me just backtrack. The only two people left in the office was, that part was funny. One guy, he's walking by, I think his name was Willie. He's walking by with no care in the world. There's white women crying, looking at some type of paperwork, I guess, about, I think, like what type of money they owe. And she's looking at Will. She's like, this matter affects all of us. And just with that sense of confidence and, just pride, he was like, nah, that affects y'all. It don't affect me. So I thought that part was funny. And then Marshall was trying to get advice from the other black guy in the break room, and the guy starts talking to him. He's like, look, I think you need to just go ahead and just break down, pay this woman off, talk to her. She's going to talk you down a little bit. And then it immediately cuts to him just, let me just get advice from my white folks. So that part was funny as well. So nevertheless, man, I think this is yet another good episode. I think out of both of the standalone episodes, I think both of them were done great. One was way more serious than the other. Three Slaps was more serious to me than the Big Payback. I thought the Big Payback was funny. Once again, it just seemed like a stand-up comedy bit brought to life, and I thought it was hilarious. So that's just my opinion. I'm still rocking with Atlanta. Atlanta and Snowfall are the two shows that I definitely have to watch in real time. I know I sound like a broken record, but I don't wait for the next day to watch those episodes. I might wait for the next day to record my review about it, but I'm watching those things. Those two shows are what's appointment television for me right now. Nevertheless, that's just my opinion. Love it or hate it. Peace.